need to make it. I can't make it. So I'm going to walk back here to the person who can.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Tomás Ruiz, yo soy de la EPA y estoy aquí para hacer una breve cosa que si hay alguna gente aquí que necesita traducción, favor de sentarse ahí atrás, porque aquí tenemos la que va a dar la traducción. Muy bien, si hay alguna gente aquí, alguna persona que necesita, por favor, síguenos allá atrás. Gracias.
Okay. I hope that those who needed that know what he said, so you'll know what to do. Okay? Thanks. So I want to welcome, thank you for coming out tonight to this meeting to hear what the process, the role that the Environmental Protection Agency will play in the 5th Ward, Kashmere, Garden, UPRR site. That is a long time ago. So we're glad to see you tonight. My name is Cheryl Jameson, and I will be the facilitator for this evening. I'm taking care of the Spanish interpreter. Thank you very much. So I want to just kind of run over what the agenda is for this evening, what you can expect to hear about tonight. So first we're going to do some introductions. Then we're going to have an overview of EPA's role and responsibilities, why they're here. You're going to hear about the major work activities and the timeline. Oh, there it is. See what happens? I speak and it shows up here. Major work activities and an anticipated schedule. You'll hear about the access approach for sampling. Then you'll hear presentations on how you, the community, can get involved. Adam's going to talk to us about how the community can impact decision-making, upcoming community involvement opportunities, and what is a community advisory group. And after all of that, because I know you're going to have questions, we're going to have an informal question and answer period. So that's kind of how we're going to go through the evening. And we've got a lot to do, so let's get started. Now, I'm told, because I don't know necessarily of my own, well yes I do, because I met a couple of them. So I'm told that there are elected officials and or their representatives in the audience. And so we want to recognize them, and in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand. But I have a little announcement first, so let me get my card. Please note that the EPA does not have a political partnership with any of the elected officials or government officials or local government candidates who may be in attendance. EPA is simply here to talk with the community in an open forum about the site, the project. Okay, so now I've done my little announcement. Now, will the elected officials or their representatives who are here tonight, would you stand? Okay, so I met a couple of y'all, so stand up. All right, here we go. Keep standing. Any more? So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and I'm going to start with this gentleman right here. Do you need the mic, or do you have an outside voice?
I don't know. I'm Nigel Quiroz. I'm the community liaison for Precinct 1. Nigel Quiroz, the community liaison for Commissioner Raphaelis, Harris County Precinct 1.
Okay, so I'll just take it to you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sandra Samaripa, Community Liaison for Commissioner Adrian Garcia, Precinct 2.
Thank you.
Emily Haynes, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Carlos Cisneros, representing District H.
Oh, you get him. Okay, and I'll get this one over here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Bealey. I'm here on behalf of your County Attorney, Christian Menifee.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis Littlejohn. I am a field rep for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? Did I get everybody? Oh, there's a council person coming in with the hat on. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. A cowboy ahead. Right, thank you. Okay, so you're gonna walk towards me. So, sir, would you introduce yourself, sir?
I'm Mike Dobbs. I'm your at-large position 1 Houston City Council member. Great to see everybody here today.
Sir? All right, so I got everybody, right? We want to thank you as elected officials for coming out, for your dedication to your district and to your constituents. EPA appreciates your dedication to improving the quality of life for so many of Houston's residents, especially those living in the neighborhoods we're going to talk about this evening. Okay, now, we have some state and local government partners that I want to recognize as well. I'm not going to call individual names, I'm just going to call organizations, okay? So we've got the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Raise your hands, all right. We have the Texas Department of State Health Services over here. You've been talking to them back there. We have Harris County. Where am I, Harris County? Over here, thank you, ma'am. We have the City of Houston, particularly the Houston Health Department. Some are over there, but we also have Mr. Stephen Williams, who's the Director of Houston Health Department, and he's going to make a couple of remarks.
How y'all doing? It's a big room, so it's hard to really connect with folks in something in a room this big, but I'm glad to see everybody out here. I just wanted to really give a big thank you to EPA. As director, by the way, I'm the director of the City Health Department, CWID. For a number of years, we heard the citizens' concern, residents' concern about the site. You know that we've done a lot of expanded testing as a health department. One thing you need to know is that we don't have formal authority from a regulatory perspective. And one of our main objectives was to get our colleagues and partners, EPA, involved. We're so happy that after looking at information that we presented to them, that they were willing to step in and play that regulatory and oversight role. And I'm sure this meeting will be fruitful. I'm really pleased at the fact that they have insisted on community involvement and really maintained some level of oversight over that. This meeting is one of 2 meetings that's going to happen. There's a lot of other activities that's going on. But I wanted to make sure that we really start the meeting off by giving a big thank you to EPA for their involvement because they have more depth than any health department. And a lot more expertise than we do. And so, thank you. We're glad you're here. Welcome to Houston. I know you've been here several times, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I would like to introduce John Myers, who's the Acting Director of the Superfund and Emergency Management Division of EPA Region 6. He's going to introduce the EPA staff, and he's going to get the agenda rolling. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for a warm welcome from you and from the city. I get to stand up here as the acting director of the Superfund Division and be the first person to talk from EPA, but there are a whole lot of people at EPA that are working on this project that I want to introduce. So first and foremost, Casey Luckett-Snyder is our project manager at EPA. I suspect you've talked to her already. She will be the one that guides this project as it goes through all of the investigation. We have some incredible technical expertise from our toxicologist, Dr. John Rauscher is standing here at the table. And I'm going to start looking around to my community involvement coordinators. Adam Weiss, community involvement coordinator. Adam helps us engage with you, make sure we hear from you, and we are giving you information in a way that you can understand it. Tom Ruiz back there, Tom Wade, also a community involvement coordinator. That will be helping out in the project. And as you came in, you probably met Dan Sonner at the table. He's a project manager also who will be working with Casey. Thank you. Okay, that's a lot of folks. So I want to talk through today, and you gave me the perfect intro to talk a little bit about why we're here. Because we've heard the community health concerns from your community. We have seen the cancer assessment study that was done by this state. You've seen the city's sampling that they've conducted. They went in and used their own resources to go out and do some sampling to see if they can find sources of what may be leading to some of the elevated results you see in the cancer assessment. So we're here because of those community health concerns. And we're also here because of your voice. And when I say your voice, you see how many elected representatives are here tonight, and you see how many other government officials here tonight. They have advocated very strongly for you as a community. It is, I've done this work for a long time at EPA, and I can't think of another situation where we have seen such a united front of elected representatives advocating on behalf of the community. So it has definitely gotten our attention. So that voice is one of the reasons that we're here. It has gotten our attention at all levels of EPA. We have different tools in EPA. You mentioned that the city doesn't have certain tools. EPA definitely has different tools that we can use to address sites like this. So we're talking a little bit tonight about the two major laws that we use to address public health. One is CERCLA. You've probably heard it more referred to as Superfund. That's the title we give ourselves. So the law is called CERCLA. Half of us don't even know what the law that stands for. It's a real long acronym. But it's the law that brings me here tonight in my group that's charged with re-implementing the Superfund law. EPA has been involved in this project for many, many years, along with the state implementing RCRA. So RCRA is the law that typically applies to facilities that were in operation. Either during their operation, they're going to have a permit under RCRA to operate in a certain way. And then as they close the facility, RCRA comes into play as they close it down and try to achieve safe standards. So two different laws that we have, but both geared to the same endpoint, protecting human health from contamination on a plane. And we go about it in different ways. So we're going to really focus a lot of our discussion on the site that is near us. It's the former Houston Wood Preserving Work site, another long name that we're going to work through tonight. And so the reason that we're focused on that is because that is the site that is subject to the RCRA regulations. It's undergoing closure. And so a lot of the concerns that were brought up, the agencies were aware of those, and we were looking for ways to address that. What is the best way that we can address that? The RCRA program does address those same kind of concerns, but it does it in a different way, and it does it in a way that we didn't believe was responsive. We didn't believe it was fast enough to get to the point where we can address those concerns. And so that, again, is why we made this decision to carve out a piece of this work related to the Houston Wood Preserving Work site and use our CERCLA or Superfund authorities to address that. So Union Pacific Railroad, or UP, is the current owner of this former Grade 7 site. They didn't originally operate the site. They assumed the liability for that site. They assumed the liability under RCRA to do the closure of the site. And that's the entity that we're going to work with under Superfund to implement the work at the site. So just this past February, EPA and Union Pacific entered into the legal agreement under our Superfund authorities to go do this work quicker off-site to address these concerns. And so the very first thing that we need to do is to do this investigation so we can understand any impacts and the trend. So our role, EPA's role in this investigation, is that we're directing the investigation. Union Pacific will be implementing a lot of the work that's done at the site. So EPA is in charge. It is in the agreement that we have the authority to direct this work. And we want that work to be done by people that may be responsible for the problem at this how our law is kind of here. We want to go to the people that have responsibility, have them do the work under our authority and under our direction. And primarily what we want to be looking at is we want to track if there's any contamination from the source, from the Houston Wood Facility site, that has maybe moved out into the neighborhood, and we want to determine the extent of how that moves out. So that's one of the primary functions of this investigation, is to understand that. And then secondly, once we collect that data, we want to understand if that presents a risk to public health. Does this explain maybe some of the health impacts we're seeing? Is there something then that warrants us to take an action? We see levels of different chemicals at high enough levels that present risk, and that gives us the authority then to take additional actions. And then finally, we need your help as we do this. A lot of it sounds like I just rolled through this whole thing of we're here, we're in charge, we're just going to do all of this work. It is definitely not going to work that way. We need to hear from you. We need to listen to your concerns. We need to learn from you. And we want to communicate every step of the way as we go through this. This is complicated. The amount of work that we're getting ready to do is fairly large and vast. We're going to be looking for very low levels of chemicals at very incredibly tiny amounts that are almost hard to imagine. Because some of the chemicals that could be out here can cause health impacts at very low levels, so we want to make sure we see that. And we're going to have to explain all of that. We're going to need your help as we do this also, because we can't go do a lot of this work essentially without your permission. If you're a resident, if you're a homeowner in the area where we would like to look and understand how the chemicals move, we need your permission to come onto your property. We need your permission to take a sample. We need your permission, and we want to share the data that we collect directly with you, so you know exactly what is happening on your property. So those are charges that we have to take, but we need to work with you as we do that, so we can all ultimately end up with the goal of protecting human health. So the person who's going to do all of this work is Casey. And so I'm going to throw this over to Casey, and she's going to step through some of the next steps that we're taking at this site.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is so great to see you all here. I want to say second, third, and fourth behind everybody else. We really, really appreciate you coming out. We really appreciate hearing from you. We really appreciate the commitment that so many community-based organizations, governmental organizations have made in this community, and we're really looking forward to working with you all as we move forward with working with Union Pacific on this investigation. So, as John said, I will be overseeing and directing the investigation. So thought it'd be a good time to get in front of y'all and talk a little bit about what that's going to look like, how it's going to unfold, the timeline that we're going to have. As John said, and certainly one of the takeaways we want to leave you all with this evening is EPA is directing the investigation. We will approve all of the plans. We will be taking some samples along with Union Pacific and the City of Houston as well. So we will be involved every step of the way. Union Pacific will be performing and conducting most of the work of the investigation. But there are also other governmental organizations who have a role and a responsibility. And I wanted to make sure that we highlight those folks because this is a joint effort between a number of organizations. So I mentioned EPA's role and Union Pacific's role. Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is our state partner. They have a very active role overseeing the, as John talked about, the work that's going on under the RCRA permit. They also have a role in this investigation that's going to happen under the Superfund law. And they're providing review and comment on work plans. They're involved in all of the meetings that we have. So we are hearing and engaging with our state partners, oh my gosh, every week. And so they play a critical role, and we really appreciate that. City of Houston Health Department, I've met some awesome people over the last couple of weeks as I have, as we really dived into this work. So I appreciate Director Williams. He's a phenomenal supporter, and I really appreciate that. Dr. Hopkins is awesome to work with, and City of Houston has a critical role as well. As Director Williams mentioned, they have done some sampling. That's one of the reasons we're here. John mentioned, City of Houston did some sampling. We recognize that there are some things we need to investigate and we need to look for. And so we're very appreciative of them investing that time and that resource, and then continuing to be a key partner as we move forward. They're reviewing and commenting on the work plans, getting input from them. We're meeting every week, at least once, sometimes several. So another really key partner. Harris County Pollution Control, another absolutely critical partner in this. Again, meeting with them weekly, getting their review of work plans, getting their comments of work plans, listening to them, listening to the role that they've had in previous work that's been done here. They did some sampling in December with regards to some storm drainage, and that is going to be really important as we move forward. It's going to be a good data point for us to start with as we move forward with the investigation work that's going to unfold over the next several months. One of the partners we haven't mentioned yet that I wanted to introduce is Mr. Omar Valdez with, okay, I gotta go slow here, Texas Department of State Health Services. Critical partner. The Department of State Health Services and the City of Houston are our partners who really focus on public health. So EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we're here to do an investigation. We focus on contaminants in soil and groundwater that could potentially pose a risk to public health, but these folks are our experts in public health, and we look to them all of the time to support the work that we do to help explain how public health fits in, how risk and exposure fits in to that public health scenario. So really appreciate you being here this evening. Let's see. So in an effort to try to communicate who all is doing what, we put together this table. I know it's very busy, and I know it's small. I joked with somebody earlier, but it wasn't really a joke, that when the first thing I said when we started working on this table is we need all of this to be on one page, right? So the first one was like 4 pages long. So how do you get stuff all on one page? Well, you start shrinking the font. So that's where we ended up, but I think it is a really helpful table. We have plenty of copies for you all to take it. Please don't try to read this. I just wanted you to recognize it when you see it. It's on the back tables. It's in all of the packets. If the one in your packet is a little bit small for you to read, we have also some that are printed landscape. We'll have those out and grab one of those. But this kind of steps through pretty much what I just said. Who are the active governmental organizations and what role are they playing, in addition to Union Pacific, and what role are they playing? So first and foremost, we have EPA. The role and responsibility is to direct and oversee the work, the investigation that's going to happen under the CERCLA order, the legal agreement that we have with Union Pacific. I mentioned TCEQ and their support, Harris County, City of Houston, and then Union Pacific. They play a critical role. They are the responsible party, as John mentioned. We're working closely with them to develop plans to move forward with the investigation. So they have a critical role in conducting and performing the work that we're going to be, again, seeing happen over the next couple of weeks, or excuse me, next couple of months. The removal site investigation, that's the name of what we're going to be doing. You'll hear it called the investigation. You may occasionally hear it called the removal site evaluation. Same thing. And then we have a soil component to that, a soil investigation. We're also going to have what we call a vapor intrusion investigation. So we'll be looking at whether or not there's a potential for contaminants that are in the groundwater to potentially affect people's air inside their homes or inside buildings where people congregate in churches and schools and that kind of thing. Community engagement. We can't emphasize enough how important that is. You all probably have the most critical role here, right? We need to learn from you because you live here. You know what's going on. And my colleague Adam will speak to the ways that EPA hopes to hear from you and the ways we hope to engage with you as we move forward. I mentioned health concerns. We have two great health agencies that are supporting us in this work, the City of Houston Health Department and the Texas Department of State Health Services, so critical. Anyway, take one of these, feel free, and on the back of it, so we also have contacts for all the organizations. So it is actually a 2-pager, but on the back side, we have contacts for everybody. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this investigation. What are the contaminants we're going to be looking for, and why are we looking for them? What are the major work activities? So, right, we have to break out the work that we're going to be doing into major work activities, and then what is the anticipated schedule? So here's the site, and I know I have to read it, otherwise I'll mess it up. The former Houston Wood Preserving Works site. So that's the site. We're right now, if I recall correctly, we're right down here in the corner right now. So that is the site. It was a former creosote plant. They treated, I'll move on. There we go. There we go, it is again. Former wood preserving facility. They treated wood for railroad ties, right? They operated for, gosh, what is that, 75-ish years? 1911 to 1984. And in the process of treating wood and preserving wood so that it doesn't get eaten up by bugs or rotted out by rain, we use some chemicals that are potential cancer-causing chemicals. And so that's what we're going to be looking for in this investigation. One of the other key takeaways that I certainly want everybody to understand and know, and I'm always here to answer questions about it, is this investigation is primarily going to be focused off-site in the neighborhood that's right around and immediately surrounding the former creosote facility. The actual work, cleanup work, or remediation work that would need to happen on the property itself, that's going to be handled under the corrective action permit. As John said, that's a different process than we have in the Superfund program. It's effective, but we feel like getting out into the neyborhood and the folks that live right around that site is critical, and we really wanted to take the most expeditious way to do that, and that's why we've brought in our Superfund authority and we've entered into a legal agreement with Union Pacific. So those are the potential contaminants that we're going to be looking for. Long names like pentachlorophenol and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. We have some fact sheets in your packets that explain what those are, explain how you can be exposed to them, explain ways to make sure you're not exposed to them, if at all possible. So, and we have, as we were just talking about Rasher a few seconds ago, wonderful toxicologist. He has a wealth of information about particular chemicals and contaminants. So any questions you have, we'll be happy to answer those. All right, so we talked about the fact that the investigation would be broken up into essentially some major work activities. There are 3 major work activities. We're going to be looking at the neighborhood vapor intrusion investigation. Vapor intrusion is the potential for lightweight contaminants and volatile contaminants that are in groundwater. So we know there's a groundwater plume. It was contaminated by creosote years ago. We've defined where it is. And so there is potential for contaminants in that groundwater to migrate up through the soil column and start to collect in indoor spaces, right? They can come through the slab. They're so tiny, they can move through slabs and soils and that kind of thing. And they can potentially accumulate in people's homes, churches, schools, multi-purpose centers like this. So we're going to be doing an investigation, or we're going to be directing an investigation to make sure that we fully understand whether or not that is potentially happening, whether or not that's a risk, and that is posing a risk to people as they're going about doing their business in the community. The next part of the investigation, this is going to be the vast majority of the work. John said we are getting ready to direct and oversee a very complex and, to be honest, really big, that's the only word I can think of right now, really big investigation. Lots of properties, lots of samples, lots of data. A lot of that is going to be focused on the neighborhood sampling, and that is to determine if contaminants from that former creosote site that I showed the map earlier and has a long name, Houston Wood Preserving Works, whether or not those contaminants have migrated from that site into the neighborhood. That can happen a couple of different ways. Wind blown is one way it can happen, be transported by stormwater, a couple of different ways that can happen. We're going to be investigating whether or not contaminants from that former creosote facility have actually migrated into the neighborhood and into the residential properties right around that former creosote facility. So one of the key pieces of information we need is the third part of the work, which is the on-site sampling. So how do we know if we just take a sample in a yard and we don't take a sample on site, well, how do we know if they're related or not? We don't. So it's really critical for us to work with Union Pacific and direct work that collects data from that former facility. So we know what kind of contaminants exist at that former facility. That way we can determine whether or not it's the same contaminants existing in the neighborhood. So three work activities that we're going to be overseeing and undertaking, and this is kind of how we expect it to go. So best laid plans, right? So this is my best laid plan today. Might change, probably will change. There are a number of things that affect how this schedule unfolds throughout the rest of the year. I'm sorry, I'm standing right behind. I just realized that. We will continue to communicate with you all and everyone, local elected officials, community, everybody that we work with, all of our partners, as we progress. What we wanted to do is give you a picture of what we think is going to happen over essentially the next 8 to 9 months. We're working on the work plans right now with Union Pacific. Once we approve those work plans, they'll actually be putting together what we call field sampling plans, which will basically tell exactly which properties are we going to look at, what is the sampling going to be, how deep is it going to be, how many samples. So all those details will be coming up as we go through the process of the work plan and the field sampling plan. We hope that we have that done by early June. Before anybody does any sampling, EPA will come back here. Not going to exactly be this place, but probably they're certainly close to it. And we will stand up here and we will talk about the field sampling plans. We will talk about what you can expect if you have signed, as John said, an agreement to let Union Pacific come on to your property and take samples. What that's going to look like, how's it going to go? So we are committed to doing that. We want to make sure that you all are fully up to speed so that there's no surprises, right? That's our goal. This is a huge investigation. It's going to take some time. There's 3 major parts of this investigation that we just went over. So that field work will continue for the hottest part of the year, right? Great. Just when you want to be out in the field collecting samples. It'll be June, July, and August. So we expect that to be wrapping up the field work by mid to late August. We anticipate then that we will be able to provide specific sampling results to property owners sometime in September after we get the data back. We use that data to basically determine risk. We use that data to determine, is there a risk to public health? And that tells EPA what we should do next, what our next step is. So got to go through all the steps to get to that. But so by the end of this year, EPA will hopefully really be well positioned to determine, is cleanup necessary? Is there a risk to public health? Again, we're going to be back in front of the community multiple times between now and the end of the year, talking with you all, making sure you have the most up-to-date information. We also have a great website. I failed to mention that earlier, so I want to point it out now. With a QR code, we have the website pulled up here. We keep all of our information. Once the work plans get approved, those will be posted on our website. We want you all to know what the work's going to look like, what you can expect, so that's a great resource as well. So, John hit on it earlier, sampling, I've mentioned it now. Sampling is a key part of this investigation. We have to have permission, Union Pacific has to have permission to go on individual people's properties to do that sampling. We can't collect data if we don't sample. I mean, it's as simple as that. Union Pacific is partnering with Houston's Health Department to obtain access agreements for sampling, And so I would like to take just a moment and invite Tony Harrison, the Union Pacific spokesperson, to speak just broadly about how that's going to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am delighted to introduce myself. My name is Tony Harrison. I grew up off Warren Street. My family's been part of Fifth Ward for 5 generations, including my father, who took Wheatley to their first basketball championship and put them on the map. And I am here working with Union Pacific as their spokesperson to help bridge connections in the community, to make sure that we work together and collaborate together the same way we're collaborating with EPA, City of Houston, Harris County, and Bayou City Initiative. Throughout every step of this process, we plan to and will do community collaboration and engagement at every single step. It starts with our first step of sampling and testing and the access agreements. Once the work plan is approved, you'll be the first to hear about it. You'll be the first to hear about everything, because that's what engagement involves. And we will need your permission to come on your property, as we just heard, for sampling so that we can have testing. Our commitment to bridging connections starts tonight, right here. If anyone has questions, wants to speak further, we will be here until the last question is answered. So following this, if you want to talk about questions, any of that, please approach us. And if after tonight you say, you know, I have a question, forgot about it, or at any step in the process you have a question, we have an email address, and we guarantee response in 48 hours. The email address, you don't have to remember it, because every piece of literature we have at the tables back there has that file. But just in case, hwpw@up.com. Again, you don't need to remember that. You can grab it in the literature. But again, for those of you I know, thank you for welcoming me here tonight. For those of you I don't know, I look forward to getting to know you and to working with you throughout this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. So everyone has talked about how important the community is, right? So now Adam's going to talk to you in more specifics about how the community is going to be involved in this process. Adam?
Okay, good evening all. It's a pleasure to see you all. I know so many of you all have probably received my emails or have spoken with me or Tom Ruiz, and it's been our pleasure to get to know you and to try to get to know you. And if I have not reached out to you, especially Dr. King, my apologies. It's been a crazy month, but it is a pleasure to be here tonight and see you all. So I'm here to talk about how the community can impact the decision-making process. And so just so you're all clear and so we're all talking on the same page, please understand that this is considered a non-time critical removal process. And currently, anyway, moving on, so we're in the assessment phase. And so during the assessment phase, there are specific things the community can do. And there's always community involvement opportunities throughout. There's specific ones in this first phase. The first thing you can do, and you can do very easily, is you can provide access for sampling when that is requested from you. And again, you have to, I think it is limited to property owners, not necessarily renters, but your ability and your willingness to let the sampling take place on your property provides information. And this whole process is a data-driven process. And so as much information as we can gain, the better decisions EPA and our partners can make. So that is the biggest, most primary thing you can do up front to support this process going forward. Secondly, so you'll hear, so you'll hear us, we try not to talk acronyms too much, but we talk about a community involvement plan. And that is our method, our means for, good evening. We're happy to have you here this evening, ma'am.
Let me thank the EPA. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to let you count down to 10 so I can be in and out, but I did not want to land and not come to this really part of the infrastructure of environmental change. It's good to see our city health director. Thank you so very much. You have been involved. We tagged each other. We started with the cancer clusters that we had a meeting over at the John P.V. Multi-Service Center when the Deer Park exploded. Many of you remember that, and contamination, and then all of a sudden we began to get the voices, even though it's been a long time, of the Kashmere, Fifth Ward, extended areas, and of course Liberty Road and all of that. And the Texas Department of Health, TCEQ, the Texas Department of Health to do those cancer clusters. But I think the main point that I want to say is first an appreciation to all of you. It will only work if we stay glued to the task. And my commitment is to ensure that we have some solution and get to the next step. Whatever that solution may be, we don't want to be without a solution. I think that's key. I also want to give you some good news. This is the 4th year anniversary of the Green New Deal. Anybody remembers that? Anybody remembers the Green New Deal? Oh, you're not looking like you're a baby. Anybody remember the Green New Deal? Anybody remember? Many people criticize that, but interestingly enough, we have come to a point where getting a net zero greenhouse gas emission is not unbelievable. Investing in infrastructure industry the right way is not unbelievable. Clean air, clean water, climate and community resilience, healthy food, access to nature, sustainable environment is not unbelievable. Is that right? So what we do here in the process of doing the testing, because that's what I understand you're instructing, and how you're doing the testing, what the results are, I just want to make sure that the community continues to be involved. We look forward to Region 6 Administrator, I don't see her here, coming back down, and also Administrator Reagan, who's doing a great job. I just want to come and thank you so very much. I know that I will get the intricacies of what you have come up with, but I'm here, and I promised it when we were together a long time ago. We're trying to get those environmental dollars to you. There's a lot that we can do with those federal infrastructure environmental dollars. And all of you need to come together and do so. As I was coming home on the plane, Dr. Bullock was landing, because tomorrow will be a celebration that he will be at the White House for the greenhouse, and I'm very proud of that. I had to come home to you, so I had to wave goodbye to the White House. But we've got a good representative there, right? And Dr. Bullock is going to be really working to make sure that we get the money that we need to get with me and with proposals that we can put forward with the city of Houston. And we hope we'll have a lot of collaboration, including super neighborhood civic clubs and otherwise. So thank you for yielding to me. It might have been on 12 seconds there, or 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up. But let me thank you very much. We're going to be focused, firm, deliberative, and successful. That's what I want to have for this community. A lot of success. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now I have a great task of following Congresswoman. One thing she said brought up a point that I wanted to make up front, and I think she conveyed it much better than I will, but let me be clear about this, is that community involvement, it is not about, let me say, the intent is to empower you, because the community has a role, a definite role, a definite capability to impact this process, and we want that, and you should want that. And she talks about staying on track, staying accountable. That is one of the things the community can do, because you have power. This is your neighborhood, this is your area, and so we are trying to assist you in using the powers that be in the money and the dollars that be in the actions to better this area. One of the things you can do that helps us shape how we approach this project is providing your input. One of the things that Tom and I have been doing is a lot of interviews with everybody we can find, trying to understand, what matters to you, what are you worried about, what do you remember about this area. to see in this area in the next 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. These are all questions and all points that help us. We incorporate all of these into our community involvement plan. And that plan feeds into the overall work we do on this site. And so if you want to impact what we do, and you want to impact what we see and what you all see in the next decade or 2 decades, contact us, let us know. We will be happy to talk to you. The last thing, I know there's already been some questions about it, we're going to talk about community advisory group. Now tonight I will give a broad and brief overview. We'll have an informational meeting later. But one of the biggest things you can do is you can serve in or support your community advisory group should it be formed. And I'll talk about that. Okay, if you are aware of a community advisory group and need a refresher or you're not aware, let me just cover this briefly. So what is a community advisory group? Simply put, it's a representative committee. It is a board that is formed from within the stakeholders who are impacted by the site. So the idea is that it should be a group of people to whom this site matters most, speaking and thinking and acting about decisions that affect this neighborhood and affect this area. It represents the broad range of community views and perspectives. If a CAG, as we call it, is formed, and it only represents people who own property and not renters, or vice versa. If it only incorporates people of a certain demographic above a certain threshold of income, or below it, then it doesn't meet its intent. The goal is to have to be representative of every facet of this neighborhood and this community. It is a focal point for information exchange. One of the things that we do is we try to share information. We want dialogue with the community. But some days it's just easier, some days it's harder. And so one thing that a CAG does is that it gives us a focal point to give information and receive information. And it gives the broader community a local resident, a committee of people you know, who you see, you bump into at the gas station or the grocery store, and you can say, hey, what about this report? What about this? Have you considered this? And that CAG takes those thoughts, those inputs, puts them together, and then we go back and forth. They share with us, we take it. It gives us one way to funnel the broader community information into a definite, accountable channel to the EPA and vice versa. And it's a public forum, as I said. So it gives you an easy and next door ability to ask questions that will be transferred to us. It gives you the ability to provide your comments and get them answered. So what is a CAG not? So it's an odd way to say it, but some people, I feel like when people hear board or they hear committee, they think about people kind of out of control. There's examples in history. So let's just talk about what a community advisory group is not. It is not an independent decision-making group that's going to be formed, it's going to have its own agenda, and it's not going to represent the needs, wants, and desires of the community. It is not a replacement for communication between EPA and the broader community. So even though a CAG might be formed and we will have a special relationship of sharing information directly with them and vice versa, just for the benefit of the community, we will not stop holding public meetings. We will not be inaccessible to anybody. We will still be available on email, on the phone, and for a broader community meeting like this. We still want to hear from all of you. We still want to dialogue. It's just that a CAG provides a reliable and usually trackable way to share information back and forth and ensure that it gets out there to every nook and cranny of the neighborhood. It is not based on power, status, or income. If you have members of a CAG and they don't represent the people that live in that community, then it's not what a CAG is supposed to be. And so it is not, again, it is not limited to elected officials. It does not exclude them, but it should represent each and every one of you. Your desires, your concerns, your cares. So, upcoming community involvement opportunities. So I talked about CAG very briefly. So we're looking at the first week of May. If you have interest, if there is interest in forming a community advisory group Once we have completed this evening, I would ask that you meet Tom and I over there at the table, the big two-table complex set up over there for media. If you have interest in it, then please meet us. And at that point, we can talk about specifics of a CAG informational meeting, whether it's going to be virtual or in person, what kind of dates work for you all. The intent is not for us to set a CAG information meeting, see who shows up. And if you don't make it, so be it. No, the goal is to be effective. And effective means meeting you all when and where works best for you. May and June, we will have another community meeting that should be a sampling update community meeting. Very similar to this same kind of scenario. It'll be another broad information opportunity for you all. September, October timeframe. Ideally, that is when you can hopefully expect sampling results to come out, and once they are released, we will have a community meeting to discuss what they are, how they're applicable to you all, how you view if you have it. And again, please understand that these are windows and these are estimations. And so we will update you if we do not make those findings or if we don't think we're going to, but this is what we're shooting for this time. The last community involvement opportunity I'm throwing up here is what we call the one-on-one calls. And so Tom and I, again, using our friend Google and using the incredibly kind and patient members of the health departments and other members of the city and the county, have been trying to identify like their super neighborhood council presidents, for example. We've been interviewing them one-on-one over the phone and in person if possible, trying to better get a better feel for this community. If you would like to talk with us, if you want to tell us, hey, I have lived here for 20 years. This is what I have seen. This is what I want to see. Have you thought about this? If you want that opportunity, then my name's going to be up here with my email, my phone. Just call me. We'll set up an appointment. We'll have a talk. I will report all your answers, and they'll go into our files, into our CIP, and that'll be another way that we can shape how we do community involvement, and then how we shape community involvement shapes how we do the larger scientific work. All right, that concludes my coverage of this.
I don't know about that. But anyway, so we've had a lot of information in about an hour. And I can imagine you've got questions, right? Questions? So we've been saying that the purpose of this meeting was to learn about EPA, how they fit into this project, what their roles and responsibilities are, why they're here, what the timeline is. So in a minute, I'm going to ask those who have questions to stand, and we'll bring you a microphone. And when we bring you the microphone, I'm going to ask, I need a favor, okay? I really need you to do me a favor. I need you to do two things. I need you to tell me your name, and I need you to tell me the question. Now, I know that many of you have comments that you'd like to make. I can imagine that many of you have stories that you'd like to tell us that you'd like EPA to hear. But I need to get as many people's questions answered. And sometimes, you know how people tell you the question is short? Sometimes the answer's not. So I want as many answers that we can get tonight. So forgive me right now if, as you're talking, I say, excuse me, can you get to the question? Okay? That's the only way we're going to get this done. But we'll do that in a moment. Now let's say that you got a question, but you don't really want to stand up and ask it. We got something for you too. On the table is, okay, so this is supposed to be a question card. It's a question sheet. And on it, you can write your question. And then you can wave it in the air. Okay, so if you were old, you know the rest of that statement. Well, see, people are smiling, so I know y'all know the rest of that statement. Write out your question, wave it, we'll come and pick it up, and then we'll read your question for you, okay? Now there is one thing that you have to do. You have to make sure I can read the question. So you need your writing needs to be legible, so I know what I'm reading, or the other person who's doing this knows what they're reading, okay? Got it? Okay, thank you. So now, we're gonna, you have a question, stand, raise your hand, we're going to bring you the microphone. Questions, not comments, not stories, questions. Okay, I'm going to go to this gentleman first, if you don't mind.
My name is Keith Downey, I'm Super Neighborhood President of the Kashmere. I have a question. Will all parties in the interest of the community work together and communicate with one another? It's very important that everyone be lockstep with one another in the interest of the community.
Okay, I'm just trying this for the first time. Is it working? Yes, all right. I couldn't agree more. From EPA's perspective, I make a commitment to everybody in this room as the project manager who will be overseeing and directing this work, that we will work with the community and we will work with every partner in this room to ensure that we get the information that we need in this investigation to determine if there is contamination in the surrounding nearby neighborhood from that former creosote facility, and then make decisions about how to address, best protect people's health.
Thank you. My name is Gladys Goffney. I have a question concerning the agreement that EPA has entered into with the railroad. I did get one answer. I saw that you had a limitations, because my question is concerning the limitations on time. So is it that the agreement will cover a period of 2023 ending in December 23? Is that your terms? Is that your limit?
The agreement itself doesn't have an expiration point on a certain date and time. It is to do a certain amount of work that is required. And so that agreement will be active, will continue on until that work is complete.
Well, then that's a problem. If you have no term, no limitations on the time, then I'm afraid we're going to get bogged down in what we've been doing over and over for the last 10 years, you know. So is there a possibility that you can add a term like we're going to be through in 8 months or 10 months or 12 months?
Thank you. Now I understand your question better. So we have put a very aggressive schedule in that agreement for the work to be performed. And so that work is laid out. Casey stepped through some of those time frames tonight to show you how we expect that work to go. There are often unforeseen problems in doing work. We've all seen it. So we don't want to have an agreement that expires and the clock runs out on us and we can't finish the job. But the work schedules that we've put into place are very aggressive, and that will get us to those timeframes near the end of the year. But the actual agreement itself, the legal agreement, doesn't expire on a date certain.
And that being said, then you have the agreement that does not have a term limitation. But have you defined the area that the investigation is going to take place in?
So we have set out the area that we're going to do the sampling in this summer. And because we don't know what that data is going to tell us yet, I can't tell you if that will be the last thing that we do. So part of our job is to track any contamination that may have moved off of that site. We're going to go to the area closest to the site first. We're going to do an incredible amount of sampling that we think will give us coverage that will tell us that answer. But when we get that data back and it says we didn't go far enough, we are going to go further. We're going to keep going until we believe we have found the extent of that contamination. And so having a legal agreement that lets us keep going is a good thing. Now we might go, okay, that first answer we got told us something. We might then make decisions based on that. At the same time, we're going to continue on and track contamination that moves further out.
Standing up here. Hi, my name is Rita Robles, and I live in the Denver Harbor community that's just east of here. And I understand that you recently didn't have Denver Harbor in your EPA's list to clean, but it's been changed. My question is, how far into Denver Harbor are you going to go? Do you have like some street names or a location that's going to be blocked off? Denver Harbor starts at Wallaceville and Lockwood, down past I-10 to Clinton, across to Wayside, and then back up.
Thank you. So we haven't finalized the original sampling footprint. Right now, we're probably limited a little bit on the east side. It may not go initially into Denver Harbor. We're going to sample the area between the boundary of the site and the road that you mentioned first. And again, if the data shows that we didn't get to the end of it, we're going to keep going. And so we want to make sure that we sample that area in between first. And so I don't know what that answer will be when we end up, but I do know that we will find the extent. So the timeline to do that initial round of work was the schedule that Casey laid out for you that shows that sampling data will be collected this summer. So we'll be able to see those results coming in, and we'll be able to know this summer, do we need to now be planning to go further out and collect additional data? And we'll talk to you about that. We'll come back, we'll share the data and show you what that looks like on a map and the areas that we think we need to continue to follow. So as we walk through tonight, Union Pacific and their contractors will be implementing the sampling under our direction and oversight, under EPA's direction and oversight. The plans that are prepared are all under our authority and our approval. We get input from a lot of the other agencies that you see around the room tonight. And we will be out in the field as they are out in the field overseeing that work. And as Casey noted, collecting some additional samples occasionally to verify the work that they're doing. Sorry,
hi, my name is Lisa Glenn, and I'm the president of Greater Fifth Ward Impact. And there is an oversight. I looked on the map, there's no lavender. So when it comes down to testing lavender, I would like you to contact me so that oversight that was on that map won't be oversighted on my street. So I'm just letting you know, I would like to be contacted. I guess everybody probably would want to be contacted to make sure that the testing has been done on my property. And set up a time and an appointment with me, because I want to be there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. One of our community involvement coordinators follow up with you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to go to this gentleman here, and then I have a question.
My name is Walter Mellon. I'd like to know, are there any plans for the property to give a deed not to be livable once you conduct all the tests? What are the plans for the property?
The area where we'll be sampling out in the neighborhood, is that what you're referring to, or the former facility?
I'd like to know the plans of all the properties, if not livable, what are your plans?
So, as we collect data and understand if the levels of contamination we're seeing are presenting a risk. That's going to inform our next steps. Because the data can tell us a variety of things. Maybe it would show that there is an unacceptable level of chemicals in the first couple of inches of soil. We very commonly go in and remove soil in those areas. We've done that at thousands of sites in our region and remove the threat, replace clean soil back, replace the grass in the yard, and rebuild it.
Sir, I'm requesting the properties that you find these properties in that's not livable. What are your plans for these properties?
So our authority is to only do certain things. Our authority is limited to addressing chemical contamination in the soil. I don't have any authority to do anything beyond that.
I make a suggestion, just in case we find these levels higher than normal and the properties are not livable, can we put solar farms on these properties to ensure that their properties continue to live and breathe for others in the area?
So we always look to finding productive uses for land where we take actions. And things like solar farms are things that we've done at other sites. We're working on a site right now in the city of New Orleans where we will be doing exactly just that. The area will be renovated and the solar farm will be put in its place and have benefits to the community in those areas. In fact, one of Casey's other hats that she wears quite a bit is redevelopment coordinator. She is an expert at understanding how to reuse properties in the best way.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I have a write-in question. First one is the PowerPoint that you showed this evening, is that available on the website?
If it isn't up there now, it will be as soon as we can get it posted.
Okay, and then the second one is, who's the company sampling for UP?
Who will be a company?
Who's the company that's doing the sampling for Union Pacific?
I don't know the answer to that question. Somebody else on our team know that? Or do you want to answer that?
Geosyntech Consultants is a technical consulting firm who will be collecting samples, as EPA said, under the direction of the US EPA.
Okay, so I got one more question. Are railroad workers at a higher exposure risk of cancer because of this? Anybody want to take that one? To the health. Oh, yes. Mr. Omar.
Hi, good evening. My name is Omar Valdez with the Department of State Health Services. If I understood the question, it was asking if the railroad workers are at a higher risk of cancer. And so you may have heard and seen and read some of these cancer occurrence assessments that we completed, posted on our webpage. It's a big reason why we as agencies are here trying to do the best work that we can. But those looks into those cancers were for community exposures. There is a whole other way to look at cancer and contaminants that may cause cancer for occupational, and those have not been completed, but in very general terms, it's what you might think. Those occupations are exposed at greater concentrations for greater durations, and so it would be expected that those risks are greater for cancer there.
Hi, good evening. My name is Casey Gibson. I'm with the Gibson Law Firm. I work with Jason Gibson, who just escorted out before he's permitted to ask questions. We currently represent over 3,300 of the residents in the Kashmere Gardens Fifth Ward area. We have made attempts to reach out to the EPA about the consent order and the settlement agreement. We'd like to get your commitment today here in front of the residents to agree to allow our independent consulting groups to observe the testing that's going to be done by Union Pacific on our clients' properties potentially and on the properties of the people in this community, and to Yes, I'm asking for, if we can get your public commitment to permit us to observe and to split samples for the testing that is going to be taking place.
So if we're entering private property and that property owner has given you permission to be present, we would allow that.
What about splitting samples?
So let's talk about that. That's the first time I've heard that question. Splitting samples raises all sorts of technical issues in our work planning that we're going to need to work through. So let's follow up on that. That the resident of that property has the full right to do whatever they want on their property. So if they give you permission to do that type of work, then that is their right.
Got a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sandra Edwards, founder of American Justice. I wanted to know, if both y'all were to do the testing and the results, if they don't be the same, where do we go from there?
So one of our goals in this study is to collect the most complete data set that we can ever put together. So right now we just have small pieces of information, right? So we want to make sure that we are designing a study that answers the questions that we need to have answered. And so our hope and our expectation is that we get the data that's definitive, that tells us the information we need to make decisions. Sometimes that decision might be no further action is needed. Sometimes that answer might be you need to take an action because this poses a risk. I can't guess what those results are going to tell me yet until we go collect this information. That's why, as we've said tonight, we are intending to do a very complete, very thorough, very large investigation to answer exactly those questions. So I had a written one, so I've had it for a few minutes. I wanted to answer it first when we get right to it. So it mentions that there's a website with information. The question is, will there be a local repository in the area in physical form for those who don't have access to the internet? So
That is an excellent question. I'm going to say yes. Thank you for bringing it up. It is something we typically do as part of the Superfund process. We, share a lot of information over the internet, but we recognize that certainly that's not the best way to communicate with everyone. So yes, we will establish a local repository that will have a packet you have tonight, in addition to all of the information that we are sharing on our website. So we will set that up and we will let you all know very soon, definitely at the next community meeting where that local repository will be located.
My name is Barbara Beal. My question is, all of the testing that has been done by the other entities, what's going to happen with them? And from the testing that has been done, there is some chemicals in my attic and on my property. And I'm just getting out of the hospital from some of the chemicals that's in my house and on my property. And I just like to know what's going to happen with the results of the testing that's been done already.
So the same has been previously conducted by the City of Houston Health Department. So I'm actually going to, Cheryl, would you mind taking a mic over to Dr. Hopkins in the white blouse, right behind you? And to let her answer that question directly.
So the data that the city collected, we turned over to the EPA and also Union Pacific, and that information went into helping them make decisions on sampling that's planned. So it was really preliminary data that, sort of, set off this more further investigation. So I would anticipate that you'll have additional data. That data has already been used, and I think that what's going to happen going forward is going to be built on. Is that a good answer? Okay. And then I just thought I think I understood Sandra question differently, maybe than EPA. I think Sandra was asking, when we were talking about the split samples, she was concerned about what will happen if they're very different from each other. And I'm assuming that if they're very different, my question would be, would it be that you would resample? Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. It's absolutely, yeah, that's one of the reasons we do split samples. We have a quality control, quality assurance plan to ensure that the data we're collecting is consistent and can be validated. So in the event that something is way off, you know, things happen, that's not a good sample, we do another one.
I'd like to say, in the case where you said under EPA, that y'all would take samples. Well, I've been on Market Street since birth, 1942. And if I give you permission, I also give that lady Lord permission. I'd like both of them. Yeah. I'd like to give us a law firm to be there.
Hello, my name is Brittany Stevens. My question is, when will the schools in Clinton Middle School, Phyllis Wheatley and Dogan, Atherton, when are these schools going to be tested, since majority of the people that live in the community attended these schools? And I know she mentioned her father went to Phyllis Wheatley, so a lot of people were affected and a lot of people do not live in the community anymore.
Excellent question. Thank you for reminding me of a point I should have made during my presentation. Sampling at schools, at parks, at recreational centers, at places particularly where children play and congregate is the top priority. That will happen first. And so we are currently, as I said earlier, working on a work plan with Union Pacific. It will go through a review and approval process at EPA. And I can assure you that certainly I can already tell you that Atherton and Elementary and Dogan Elementary are both high priorities for sampling. So those will have, in addition to, I believe it's the Julia Hester Recreational Center, and there's several parks that are right around the area. Those will be high priorities for sampling. I meant to say Dogan, so not Dogan, Atherton, the recreational center, and then there's 3 parks, I believe, that are right around the former Creosote facility that will be included, and we will have those specified in the work plan, again, once it's approved by EPA, which will be published on our website, and we will have that in local repository as well. Okay. Flaming Milling, F-L-E-M-I-N-G. Okay, we will look at its location and proximity and the investigation area. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, so I have 2 write-ins. The first one is, what is the process to request access for testing?
We will identify specific properties that will be part of the investigation, and we have kind of an initial focus area. I've said it a time or two, I'm going to say it again. We will be starting in on the residential properties and the schools that I just mentioned, in the rec center and the parks that are really right around and in a very close vicinity of the former Creosote facility. We will sample around there, we'll see what the data tells us, and then if we need to step out and do some additional investigation to determine, again, if there is contamination from that former Creosote facility in the neighborhood right around. So we will be in touch, and Union Pacific is working with the City of Houston as we move forward, and we have a work plan, and we've identified this property. We've identified the specific properties. You will be approached by a City of Houston representative and a representative from Union Pacific to request that you would sign an access agreement that would allow for the sampling that be conducted.
I have another write-in. Given the answer with regard to Union Pacific employees who may have a higher rate of cancer? What's being done to protect your employees that may be exposed?
So that is outside of, I will say, that's definitely outside of the bounds of the off-site neighborhood investigation that we'll be conducting. I know that Union Pacific has a website that they use to communicate information, and I'm sure that if they have something with regards to the safety of their employees, that they would, be able to share that via their website. Correct, we are sampling on the property, and again, the purpose of that is to determine what is the contamination on site, and how does that compare or relate to any contamination we might find off-site.
Okay, being that we have a lot of little kids on Lavender, and me and Miss Edwards have seen them where they went down into the water wheel in front of Miss Bill's house, and they pulled stuff up out the drain or the water wheel, what it is down there. And he's had on a white suit and face covered, and he gets it up out the ground, and after he gets through, he sprays something to clean up the area. And that tells me it's really bad. So when all this is dug up, and you got all these little kids running around, most of the time they don't even have shoes on. What would that do to the area? Will the contamination that y'all dig up, and will y'all make sure the area is clean and put back, even though if you do, which you're gonna find is contaminated anyway, but you're gonna fix it where if someone was to come around it, they wouldn't be in touch or intact to catch the contamination?
I hear your concern, and I can assure you that when the sampling is conducted, the workers who are conducting it will have on protective gear. They won't be in full hazmat suits. But they'll wash their hands after they're done. They will be rinsing off their equipment to make sure that we don't transfer any contaminants around properties. And the sample itself is small, like about that small, and just use a hand auger. You go down to a certain depth, you collect it, and then all that soil is taken away. And if the little hole that's left will be backfilled with either clean dirt or certainly something
But Adam hazmat, we saw him several times. So I think they're gonna have a hazmat.
Okay, I'm certainly not doubting you. That may be a little much, but we will be working with Union Pacific. Again, they will be actually performing the sampling. We will also have representatives out in the field to take split samples. The City of Houston will too. So we will be working very closely with all of our partners to ensure that the workers are safe and that we leave 100% safe conditions when we're done doing the sampling.
Any other questions? Any other?
Yes, ma'am. I have one, I think maybe one more, but my question is, what happens to people? I know the goal is to make sure that the environment gets better, but what happens to people that's already been exposed, that's already passed away, and that still has health conditions because of it?
Well, that's something that we want to ensure that we address. We are here to do an investigation to determine, again, whether there's contamination in the neighborhood. We recognize, that's one of the reasons we're here. We recognize there have been studies done by the state of Texas that indicate there are elevated levels of cancer. We will be using the information we collect to make decisions about how to protect public health moving forward. We don't have a way to change what's happened, and we are, it's heartbreaking to hear some of the stories, it really is. That's why we're partnering with the City of Houston Health Department and the fantastic work that they're doing in the community, and we're partnering with the state of Texas, the Texas Department of Health Services, to make sure that we can answer questions about public health and about risk moving forward.
Keith Downey again, and the question that I have is concerning testing in wet conditions and dry conditions. Because it's only been currently capped during wet conditions of the heavy rains of Houston, a lot of times residents see rainbow sheens running along the curb and gutters that do not exist when it's dry. So that's going to be important as well.
Can we agree more? Yes, sir, that will happen.
Okay, we got a question right there.
Hello. I am just curious, I know you guys are developing your work plan, but do you have an initial idea of how many properties that you are going to sample? And then my follow-up question to that would be, when, after the quality control process of evaluating the data, will you release it and how?
Excellent questions too. That was fantastic. I like this part because it, first of all, reminds me of things I forgot to say when I was doing my presentation. So, no, we don't have a specific number. I can tell you it will be in the hundreds of properties. Again, we're focused on the area right around the former facility, the former creosote site. There are, you all live here, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, there's hundreds of properties within a block, you know, around, so hundreds. More than that, I can't be that specific. Yes, the data will be released. We will provide that data directly to homeowners, and then we will compile a summary of the data. We'll come right back here. We're going to present it to you all in a summary report so that you all understand as a whole what it means for your community. And we use that data to determine, again, whether or not there's a risk and what decisions we need to make moving forward with regards to addressing risk, if there's risk associated with contamination from that former creosote site. If you are a property owner, you will receive a letter with that data directly to you. But then we'll have a summary report of all the data that we will present.
So you won't be making like some aggregated data set or something publicly available on your website?
Absolutely. The summary report will be available on our website when it's put together. We want to be very respectful and cognizant of people's personal information, so it will be, again, a summary report, but individual property owners will receive a report specific to their property.
I'd like to know for the properties of chemicals that's found on these properties that you're going to test, will it be greater on vacant properties or the ones that the houses are?
Do you mean, do we expect to see more contamination on vacant properties as opposed to houses with okay. So I don't have an answer to that. That's why we're here to do an investigation, right? And so we want to make sure that we're looking at those vacant properties because they may be property moving into some type of redevelopment. We also want to look at properties that have people living in them right now. You know, the kids are playing in the backyard, they've got people and going. So we want to look at any and all properties to ensure that we're covering the spectrum of potential exposure both now and what could happen in the future if a vacant property is redeveloped. Right now I can tell you we're focused in on the actual properties that are within the immediate vicinity of the former Houston Wood Preserving Works site, whether or not it has a structure on it or not.
Okay, I have another question.
There was a question in the back and then we're
Thank you. I know you all talked about testing the schools, and a lot of these schools actually in the immediate area have been rebuilt since we started talking about this, actually just a little bit prior to. So my question is, continuously, can you all assist the city and the school district with testing the children? And the reason why I asked that question, the children now, and some of those that may have graduated before, the reason why I asked that question is because the children in this area, in the immediate area of the Creosote, have the lowest performance. And so I'm wondering if there's any correlation with perhaps learning disabilities that may have impacted or had some bearing on the children's ability to learn. And I say that because I know it's going to be an expensive test, but I'm just wanting to give you a partner, since it's federal, EPA, then that you all can have some allowances of federal funding for testing of these children.
So this investigation will not include testing on people. It will be focused on soil and groundwater, and looking at whether or not there's a potential for contaminants to collect inside homes, like we talked about earlier. We're partnering with the Houston Health Department, and we're partnering especially with the Texas State Department of Human Health Services. They are the public agency, the public health agency in the state of Texas. That kind of particular request, specifically with regards to people testing, human testing, would have to go to a public health agency. We would work very closely moving forward with them on any decisions that were made about whether that should proceed and how that would look.
But that would require specific testing, correct, of those children?
I'm not even going to speak to that, but I sure could let Omar. I know about testing dirt.
Thank you for the question. That's very logical what you're asking, and there are examples of sites where if the data takes us there, we would move on to testing people, blood, urine, and there's other types of testing that can be done. However, we wait for the data to develop. We wait to see if there is a reason for that correlates that. So this next step, what EPA is describing here, is very important because it'll be the most robust data set that exists here for the community. We will be working closely with them, reviewing it closely along with them, and seeing if it calls for additional types of health consultations, any kind of evaluation. And as I said, there are examples of where we move to those other types of testing, and we will remain engaged, like Casey said.
Okay, it's a hard question. Okay, I want you to picture what I picture every day. And I don't know what to do as a community leader, and I'm reaching out for everybody in this room. On my street, we already know it's the plume, okay? They have redeveloped all these old houses and moved all these people in, pregnant women and a lot of little children. I look at these kids roll around in this dirt, which we have tested and know what's over there. And I worry about these kids, and I can't do anything. Because I know they're gonna wind up sick. How do we shut that down? We have a whole new, this man came and bought all those old abandoned, messed up houses and patched them together. I don't say redevelopment, but patched it together and moved families in. Everyone I'm pregnant, all in Vegas, 1, 2, 3, and 0. So I can't stand to see this. I'm just gonna say I can't stand to see this every day because I know they're gonna wind up sick. It's like it's nothing going on. I don't think he informed them of what's going on in the area. But I see this and I have a problem with it every day. How do we address this? Because it needs to be addressed. Those people need to know, and I don't know if they know or not or don't care, but I care. And I need somebody to make sure they know that they are in a bad area.
Well, I have 2 kids, so I hear you. And one of the reasons, again, we have partnered with the City of Houston and the Health Department is because they are best positioned here locally to work with people and provide information about ways that people can protect themselves from potential contaminants that may be in the dirt, may be associated with the former creosote facility. We have a nice safety spec sheet in our packet. I hope people will take it. I hope we will make copies of it. We can put it at churches, we can put it at the schools. We are hoping to wage an information campaign as part of this, as part of the community engagement that you heard about earlier, to make sure that people have information to make decisions about how to protect their health, especially as we're going through the investigation and we're figuring out, is there contamination on these properties and is it related to the former creosote facility?
I just wanted to add on to that. So there are a lot of questions, right? People see things and we don't know. And that's why we want to go in and collect data. But if we can't get to an area to collect data, we can't answer these questions. And so I mentioned earlier, we need your help. And one of the biggest things we need your help on is helping us get access agreements. Talk to your neighbors. Say, don't you want to know, is it safe for your kids to play in this yard? We can sample, we can help inform people if it's safe or not.
Good evening. I arrived late, so this question may have been addressed. If so, let me know. I see that we have EPA here, but I'm not sure what the other part is. I work with the CIRA program. I have a background in environmental work. My husband passed almost 2 years ago. And I may need to do some work again. I'd be interested to know if anyone can tell me the working operation that you have in Houston. What is your work home like? And especially, do you employ young people? I'd like to do some work again in that arena, but probably for me on a part-time basis, and something I can do at home to become familiar with what the inside of the agency is like. That would be beneficial to our communities, because I think we need that, especially young people, especially internships.
All the things that you walk through, because that reminds us of another thing that we always revisit. Part of our focus in the last couple of years, and certainly with our new leadership in EPA, is to make sure that we haven't overlooked communities. That are there communities out there that in our work in the past, we may have missed, glossed over, not paid enough attention to, not gone in and developed relationships with. And you know, we are doubling our efforts to do that, to work in areas that maybe we missed in the past. And one of the things, and I love that you mentioned about educating younger people and talking about opportunities. EPA does have an internship program where we do hire summer, over the summer for kids. But another thing I would like to commit to do is work with some of the area schools. We love to come in and talk to the classes, talk about what we do, because it is a mystery sometimes of what we do at EPA. It's a mystery to us sometimes what we do. We're a vast agency. We just talked about a tiny piece of what EPA does here tonight, right? So there's a lot of different parts and pieces of EPA. And so, you know, Dr. Rouser over here, John has been in lots of classrooms and talked to lots of people about how we understand what chemicals are and how they they impact our health. And so we can definitely do that. We would love to partner with you guys. We would love to come in, talk to your schools, talk to any youth groups that you know of. We love our job. We're excited about it. We love to talk about it. You probably can't get us to shut up if you start us. So yes, please, we'll continue to do that.
Oh, can I follow on to that real quick? So I mentioned that I had kids earlier. The highlight of my year is when it is the career day, because my 12-year-old wants mom to come talk about his career at EPA. As John said, we love the work we do, so we love to come and talk to local schools about what we do at EPA. And you mentioned internships. John mentioned that EPA does have an internship program. I, as a college student, participated in the TCEQ Mickey Leland internship program. So if you all know of college-age kids who are interested in the environmental field, it is a phenomenal opportunity to intern with companies that have environmental programs, to intern with agencies, to intern with cities in their environmental programs. I would encourage you all to reach out if, again, you know college-age kids interested in the environmental field. The TCEQ Mickey Leland Environmental Intern Program. It's the reason I'm here today, to be honest. So it's a great opportunity.
He prefers me to ask it. So the question is, he wants to know what the property values, what does this situation and for UP what does it do to the property values in the area?
So that's a good question. It's one that comes up a lot when EPA comes in front of the community and we start talking about sampling and we start talking about potential contamination. So one of the things we want to ensure is that the work we're doing, the investigation we're performing is not impacting property values. So we need to know this data. We need you all to have this information, mostly because we want to make sure that families who live here, that people who live here have information they need to make decisions about health and their own health and their own safety. We'll use that data to determine if there's contamination that needs to be addressed, that needs to be cleaned up. Sometimes that happens. John said earlier, that could be one course of action. And so if that does happen and some cleanups occur, we have found at other Superfund sites, certainly after EPA goes through its process of evaluating properties and conducting cleanups if that's necessary, property values reflect that. So, that's something we're cognizant of. It's also something we want to be very respectful of. It's one of the reasons why property owners will receive specific information about their property, but we don't just put that out in a big report for everybody to see. So there won't be specific addresses and that kind of thing. So we want to be very purposeful about not releasing information that could impact property values.
I just want to say, we know contamination is there. My brother's deceased now, but he had a dog. And he renamed the dog, but we had no idea. The dog was always tied to the tree by the well. And the dog eventually started getting a lot of big lumps on the dog. So he renamed the dog Plug Ugly. And so this is a plug ugly situation here that needs to be fixed as soon as possible. We don't need to let this plug ugly situation keep growing.
I just want to make a statement. One question. Okay, what if you were in this area and somebody announced you to have a good day? How would that feel? Or if you're in your area, your part of town, have a good day. We don't have that leisure here. We are challenged every day and impacted by everything under the sun here.
Any other questions? One more question? Yes, ma'am.
Is there a possibility, my name is Joanna Stevenson, and I'm the president of the Greater Fifth Ward Super Neighborhood. see you again too. My question is there any way that, it's an informative packet, but when I got to the back, the attachments, even with my reading glasses, I was going blind trying to read it. So those last few pages, even if we pass this out to the community, they would not be able to, it wouldn't be beneficial in the state it's in. So if those few pages could be either, I don't know.
We have that one, yes, those made it into the packet, yes, those made it into the packet, and they are too small to read, so we made some bigger landscape versions of it. Coming right up to you, please feel free to pass them around. Again, we'll put this information in a local repository as well, and we'll have all of it. All of this information is on our website, so people can take a look at it. But yeah, I think I joked, I don't know if you were here earlier when I joked, but the table started off being like 3 pages long, and how did we get to 1 page? Well, we had to shrink the font.
Okay, well, thank you.
But thank you for that.
Yeah, well, we're not done, he went that way. He went that way, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Derek, would you bring a handful of those up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Come on down. So, I think that's all of our questions. Any last comments that you would like to make before I thank people for coming?
Thank you.
So, thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate that you all did what I asked, and you limited it to a question, so we were able to get a lot of questions and a lot of information. So, thank you for coming, and have a good evening. Bye.